Welcome to the Hazard Class Podcast. This is the podcast where I ask my stupid questions to some of the smartest people in and around the world of emergency services. My guest this week is a Marine Infantry Combat Veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, a retired firefighter, and most recently, the author of a new book, Counting on Death, a Marine Infantryman's Journey from the Front Lines of Combat to the Fight for Peace. The book recounts the experiences he had while serving in Ramadi, Iraq during a deployment in 2005. This week, my guest, Josh Shores. Josh, what's up?
Welcome. Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course, man. I'm super excited. Like I said, the new book's out. I read it. It's awesome. Well, if I'm being truthful, I listened to it because it's on Audible. But that was awesome. It was super cool. And it's a really unbelievable task to think of that you wrote a book like in totality, right? Does that feel overwhelming to think in retrospect?
Yeah, it was. To like just do the whole process of it, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like you're now an author. You wrote a multi-100-page book, right? That's crazy.
yeah. It's funny you say that too. It was a long process. I mean, it's been 12 years or so in the making. I did it. It started kind of as like a therapy session through the VA with like cognitive therapy, writing down everything, and then I just. My mind is very visual like that. And I was just like, I'm going to start writing this. I'm just going to write it out, like the whole thing. And then it was like a daunting task after I got done with that. Just to see, like have people read it. And it was pretty raw, like even more so than what it is right now. And, there were people that were just like, you can't really share this stuff. You shouldn't be talking about this. And it's like, well, if that's the way this book is like starting, then maybe I'm onto something that maybe we should talk about, because it's like, we can't hide from, maybe we can hide from it on the US side of things, but like we all make fucking mistakes and we all do things that we could do better. And part of me was like, let me focus on that, because that's really what, at least from my experience, has affected me most in terms of like returning from combat, has been the things I could have done better or done differently, more so than like just the fact I was in combat. Like anyone that's been a vet, like with experience in combat, and I think you can compare this with firefighting. Firefighting's fucking great. Like, having been a firefighter, I can speak to this. Like you get in on a good fire, it's hot, it's scary. You don't know where you're going. And it's just like that rush, and that when you're done with it, and I don't lose sleep over stuff like that. I lose sleep over well, fuck, why didn't I find this? Or why didn't I get that fire out quicker? And
absolutely. Yeah. I totally relate to that idea that it's the mistakes and the changes you would make that are the haunting pieces, not so much so everything that went correctly. Right.
Yeah.
Because that's just the work, right? The work is doing things correctly.
Exactly. Right? Like when I became a Marine, I knew, especially in the infantry, it's like I'm going in to fight wars and kill bad dudes. And like that, I did that in Afghanistan. I did it in Ramadi. And that doesn't make me lose sleep at night. It's some of the other stuff that happened, and you read about it, that affects me. But overall, like that task of writing it was daunting, because it was just like the process of editing and the process of submitting it and getting feedback from like agents and publishers that they just don't want to hear stories about Iraq anymore. And it's like, well, maybe this isn't a good book. Maybe I shouldn't publish it. And for a while there, it was like a 6-year period. I just let it sit, and I'm like, no one wants to read it. And then I came back to it and tried it, and it took. So
as you were developing that, and things were, in that vein that was maybe too raw for certain ears, or I guess eyes in the case of a book, who was your target audience that you were thinking it was going to be for?
Oh, it was selfishly for me. Like I was just getting my thoughts and feelings out there into the world, like into existence. And I think making it something that was a tangible experience that I could like refer to, that affected me. And then after that, it was like when I actually started narrowing it down, after hearing feedback from people, because you know, some of the feedback was like, people don't want to read about this, and I'm like, well, this is a part of what like veterans and anyone that deals with these kinds of experiences has to go through. Is like, you have to learn to either compartmentalize it and tuck it away, or you address it. And so I was like, well, how do I address this? Well, for myself, and if I'm going to make a book of it, while making it palatable for someone that doesn't have any experience with it. And so some of it had to be like, you know, refurbished, I guess. But still have the content where it might be something someone could read and not be like upset, you know? So
yeah, I mean, when I listened to it, you know, there was moments that were obviously like extremely raw, obviously extremely personal, and brutal, honestly. And, you know, do you think that the idea that this was written for you, like through your own journey, allowed you to get to that point? Like, I think that if you would have written it for somebody else, you might not have had the ability to dig as deep as you did in the actual text. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it wouldn't be, you know, as a lot of people say, that I think it's a little bit of a buzzword right now. I've seen in a number of books, and is raw and unflinching, but it wouldn't have been that way had I wrote it for anyone else. And I think there's a filmmaker, I can't remember who it was. It's a notable filmmaker that was in an interview and talked about, you know, someone asked a question of, you know, how do your films turn out so great? And he's like, I just make them for myself. I don't make them for anyone else. And I think my wife's an artist, my mother-in-law's an artist, and some of the best work I've seen them do has been just things that they just want to make. And it's not even like commissioned work. You know, it's just things that they make and for themselves. And this book would not have been that. You know, it was easier for me to take things out or to adjust things based off of feedback from people, versus, you know, having to bring something else to the table. It's like, if you lay it all out there, the only thing that you have left is constructive criticism from people that you trust, and you know, and using that to make your end art better. I guess that would be the best way to compare it, is using that feedback to take away versus add.
Yeah. So in that vein, there was a chunk in the introduction that I read that I was like just floored by. And so I want to read it, and I want to have you expand upon it, because it like sunk me. So, like, for sake of reference, right? I had two brothers that served in Iraq, right? One of them has since killed himself. The other one now has basically dedicated his entire life into suicide prevention. He works for Wounded Warrior Project and the VA and all these different career fields, all focused in suicide prevention, kind of in the name of my other brother. And so this book was like more than just like learning your story. We talked about this before we started recording, but like, wow, I really got to experience like some of the things that I never got an opportunity to hear from my brother, or the stuff that my brother that's still with us is you know, still working to work through and whatnot. And so this line you wrote in the book: those of us who survived were left feeling disappointed as we were counting on death, only to be spared to live a life burdened with the actions and memories of war. Like, that was like a pause the book. Holy shit, that's heavy. So, like, I guess the question is, do you think that going to war indelibly leaves that of imprint? There's no way to do it without that imprint?
Oh, that's a good question, man. I think if you go to war and the mission set isn't clear, and there are a lot of policies interfering with what we need to do as Marines or as combatants, then yes, I think there's no way to come back from that, because Ramadi was, at the time I was there, was a very confusing place. We didn't know who we were really fighting, you know, and so we made a lot of mistakes, and you know, that stuff wears on you. You know, not everyone has a gun, and is pointing it at you in that type of war. And that was a very hard one to come back from. Now in Afghanistan, when I was there, it was cut and dry. Like we had the Taliban fighting us. It was easy to shoot and kill them because they were trying to shoot and kill us. And that was it. You know, we were just better than them at that point. And, you know, I think that was, I don't lose sleep over that deployment. So I don't know that, I think with the amount of IEDs and just like ambushes we experienced in Ramadi, the easiest thing to do is just say, well, I'm not coming home from this. So I'm just going to do whatever I need to live. And, you know, that sometimes means you may not give second thought to certain decisions while you're there and pulling the trigger. But when you're there, you think, well, I won't be home to experience anything, you know, having to deal with this. So it doesn't matter. And then you survive and it's like, well, shit, now what?
Yeah.
And
so,
like the best way to reference that is just like Lieutenant Dan. Like,
yeah.
I watched that from Forrest Gump after I got back, and I was like tearing up. It's just like, damn, like I get that feeling when he's like, I'm supposed to die here, you know? It's like shit, you know?
As you describe that, you know, decision to allow that to happen for the sake of being able to progress, maybe not to put words in your mouth, but this idea that in order to progress through the day and through the deployment, you have to accept that this is my fate. And is that a tangible thing you think about, or do you think that somehow it just happens? Do you say like, okay, I should decide this? Or do you, at some point, does it just click over in your brain and you go, oh, this is going to be my fate and there's nothing I can do about it, so I might as well accept it?
When you start seeing the people that you look up to and your mentors and other people that you're around, you know, day after day, and you respect getting killed, and rank doesn't matter. You know, we had captains getting killed. We had first sergeants getting third-degree burns from IEDs. And it's just like, when there's no front line really, and you don't feel safe anywhere, the best thing to do is just say like, that's it, I'm just going to die. And now I can go about my day. I don't have to worry about it anymore, you know?
Yeah. So I realize that we jumped right into it because I'm hot trot to talk about this. Can we bounce back and just give me a 10,000 foot view of what your book covers in terms of like, from the point of you joining the Marines, maybe to, you know, obviously at the end you go to Afghanistan, and then, you know, you have these mental health struggles on the post side. For someone that hasn't read it or listened to it yet.
Yeah, you just did a great job. That's it.
No kidding. As I said that, I was like, oh, I guess I don't need him to do it. I kind of just did it.
No, it is. I mean, the biggest thing, like, I think the biggest takeaway, the thing I'm proudest about with this book, and like the takeaway, like, why should anyone read this? And actually, one of my friends, one of the people I had read this was a Gold Star family member. So one of my friends who died, I wanted his mom to read it and see her thoughts on it before I published it. And her first question was, well, why would anyone want to read this, you know, before she even read it? And I'm like, that's a great question. And a part of me at that point, I thought about it, and I said, well, I feel, and of course it's my own work, so like I'm going to feel strongly about it, but I feel like it has a potential to be a book that someone who's served overseas, or, you know, even someone that deals with like the thoughts of suicide from law enforcement or fire, or, you know, just any of those highly stressed jobs. I think it's a way that they could read it and say, hey, like my spouse or my kids, like, read this, and this is a little bit of what I feel in my day to day. And I hope with that can come healing, or at least open the door to talk about it. It's a very vulnerable position to be in. And I was very concerned when I first released it of like, is it going to be taken that I'm like, look like a big, you know, pussy, or is it something that I'm going to, you know, people are going to hate that I wrote about the stuff we did, or we talked about.
It's so funny. It's so funny from the outside. I don't want to cut you off. It's so funny from the outside looking in to think about like this, harrowing story of going to war, and that you could think publishing it would result in people thinking that that is who you are. Or like me from the outside looking in, I was like, wow, what an incredible story of like heroism and like perseverance and all these things. And you're like, oh man, hopefully they don't think I'm a pussy. And like, it just couldn't be farther from the truth for like what my experience was reading the book. And so I think it's really interesting to think that that's your perspective, or was your perspective potentially in publishing it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. One thing that I always have,
it was a roller coaster of emotions.
Oh, I can't imagine, right? And that moment of being vulnerable, especially probably in those early drafts where you're really just like for the first time bearing some of these memories and these thoughts, had to have been, hard. And who was the first person that you really like confided in terms of like, I have these words on paper. What do you think about this?
I can't remember if it was it may have been my father-in-law. Mm-hmm. He's a historian, like a doctorate in history, and so I was like, I wanted to see what his view of it was. And he had known me since we were 15. I was 15, so wow. He got to see, he saw a lot of my changes and everything going, prior to even going to the military and then coming back from war, and all that. So yeah, I think, I had other friends read it,
Mm-hmm. The one thing I want to do is despite the fact that so far this conversation has been pretty heavy, there actually is some fun parts of the book too. And I know you talked about it. I guess I haven't talked about it yet, but you did a 3-hour-long podcast with Dagan Van Oosten for the Nomadic Research Podcast. Friend of the show, he's been on the show, friend of mine, mutual friend. Nice. And that podcast is awesome. So if for anyone listening, check that out too. But one thing that you guys talked about there that I couldn't help not talk about was your unit. Or I don't want to. If I'm wrong on the way I say it, give me some grace. Your unit commander, someone was left-handed, and always his magazine always dropped out of his gun, which made me laugh so much. And I don't even have a mutual experience to have that be extra funny like you and Dagan might. But man, the idea of somebody like really diligently trying to do war and then their gun keeps falling apart made me laugh. And what a silly problem to have just because you happen to be left-handed. I think that's really funny. But that's a segue to this idea. I had this question with Dagan too, and I'd be interested based on your experience if you agree. But there seems to be this thing about war despite the fact that we all know that it's brutal and leaves these scars and is an undesirable circumstance of life. There seems to be this romanticized version of it that when people talk, especially combat veteran to combat veteran, where they there's this reminiscent, oh man, those were the days kind of thing.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I mean, it is that way a little bit. It's like, we don't laugh about the way our friends died or remember that time so-and-so got killed, man, but any other time that it's like the good comment, like we talked about in the beginning, if it's like, once you experience war, it's like, nothing else can match it. And being a firefighter, it's a similar feeling. Once you have a really good fire, your brain just like hyper focuses on everything that's important to keep you alive. And a lot of those things get embedded into your memory. And so you're looking at like little details and you're noticing you're experiencing like all the senses at the same time. And there's nothing that I've done. I haven't done heavy drugs, so I don't know, but there's nothing.
Me either. Definitely not.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
So it's like, but nothing else compares to that. And so when you get together with other people that have experienced that, and it's a surviving high in a sense, it's like, that's all you want to do is talk about it. Like, remember that time, we got shot at and I fell down in the street,
There seems to be this thing about like the amplification of moments, right? Whether it's extremely high or extremely low, the inverse of them seem to live close together. and they also are equally impactful, right? Like, man, we had the worst day ever, but also this thing that happened really close to it was incredible. We laughed our asses off or whatever it might be, right? I think that, I don't know why the human brain, it must be some sort of neurochemistry or something that does that, but it seems like there's some sort of compensatory reaction with the highs and lows.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, when you're living, and this is, again, the fire service is so similar, but when you're living with the people that you're working with, you know, movies can't show the day-to-day life and like the problem solving that happens for just like stupid things that you deal with at home and then come to work. Like, how do you fix this kitchen sink? You know, I have this issue with my car and there's someone at work that knows how to do it. And so they talk you through it. And so it's like you're building these amazing relationships with these people, both in the military and on the fire service. And then when it comes time to rely on them in a life or death, you know, situation, it's like that only bonds you closer. So, you know, it's yet again something that you can talk about and no one else can understand. But that gives you that opportunity to bond in a way that, unless you're experiencing something terrible and used to it, like, unless you're used to it, you're not gonna be able to like laugh it off, you know?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are like, oh, I could never do what you did. It's like, no, you could. Look at all the resilience from the people in London in World War II when they're getting bombed, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are times when, you know, the bombs didn't hit their home and they look back years later and say, damn, that was crazy. Remember how I got out of the street and got in the basement and just missed this bomb? You know? So, yeah.
For sure. So obviously I said, like, in Dagan's podcast, you guys really hammered on the contents of the book, but I want to take a look at like kind of what happened post book. So now you're going, you know, you're in therapy, right? You're struggling with suicidal ideation. You're working through that. And at some point you go like, maybe the fire service will make this better. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right, man. It's like, you know, I thought to myself, well, I've already like, you know, killed people and been around friends that have died. So why don't I try to help people and be around people I don't know dying? And, you know, makes sense. And, I was like, you know, I'm used to seeing extreme traumas on bodies and everything, so it's not a big deal. Well, it's like the thing you can't prepare for is all the medical emergencies at 2 in the morning that are just nothing or bleeding gums. And you're like, why am I exhausted for this person who's just abusing the system? And that started to wear on me more than anything, you know, over the years of doing it. But yeah, I was definitely eager to get in on the fire fight in the sense of being in the fire service, just because it felt similar, like the camaraderie, everything.
So you, once you get inside the fire service, right, you're working, same department that I work for now. And how long were you working? You, what, 5-6 years, something like that?
7.5. Yeah.
7.5. Oh, there you go. So, when that came to an end, obviously that must have been hard, because I know from knowing people that know you that you were very good at the job and you were very well liked. And so what was the decision to walk away like? It must have been hard, because I imagine I know it would be a hard decision for me. And based on everything I've heard about you, you were very similar in your reception to the job and stuff.
So I had a number of things happen that lined up. A series of unfortunate things that had happened, and you know, leading up to what was it, January of 2019, I fell on ice on a fire in an alleyway and broke my neck. And you know, going through that therapy, and realizing how alone that we are in the fire service, and as far as the city having our back after an injury or something like that. You know, after realizing that no one really is there for us when we really need it, at the time, at least when I was there. You know, they wouldn't do MRI. They wouldn't. They just wanted me to do all these physical therapy sessions, which I did. I completed them. At the time, I was a peer fitness trainer, and so I was in very good shape. And they told me that the reason that I still had residual pain from my neck was that I just needed to be in better shape. And so I laughed, and so I ended up leaving. I was like, this isn't for me. After my neck, you know, had been broken, I went and became a financial advisor of all things. And
similar, very similar.
Yeah. And then I went and I started advocating for myself because it still didn't feel right. And it was almost a year later. And my left arm started going numb. And I said, I was sitting at my desk, you know, as a financial advisor. And I said, you know, I needed someone to look at this. I want an MRI. I called the case manager, you know, for workplace injuries. And they were like, fine, we'll approve it. And they did. And as soon as they saw my neck, you know, the surgeon said, well, the good news is you're not a quadriplegic. The bad news is the only way to fix this is surgery. And they're like, we need to give you a full discectomy, a full replacement of my C5, C6 because my spinal cord was being pressed on by my disc, and it was potentially going to make me a quadriplegic. So I got in for a emergency surgery after it all got approved in the middle of COVID, and so that was a whole nother thing. And when they got in there, they said, "Oh, you're so lucky you got in here to get your surgery done because there was a small flail segment of bone that had broken off inside of my neck, and every time I turned my head, it would slowly saw at my spinal cord." And he's like, "One day you would have just turned your head and become a quadriplegic."
Holy crap.
And I was like, you know, damn. So on that point, and I say all that because especially in like the fire service, law enforcement, and even military, it's like be an advocate for yourself for what you need. Screw what anyone else thinks. And that was going back to your question. The hardest thing was wondering, like, who am I? You know, I was a Marine and I was a firefighter, and now what? I'm gonna stop doing the thing that brought me a lot of happiness. And I had a hard time with like my self-image, wondering, like, what am I worthy of being me now that I'm not a firefighter? You know, what will my peers think? Do they think I'm a quitter, that I'm quitting on them? And so it was a very tough decision. But working through it with a therapist, you know, we came to the realization that it needed to be done. And so I'm someone that like fixes when I find an issue and it's like, well, that's a problem. Let's fix it. And that means I have to stop. And so, yeah.
Wow. I never realized that it was that severe. I knew a tiny bit about you going up. That's insane. Right.
Yeah. It's funny too, just knowing the fire service, because I've had people come up to me since I left and they're like, oh, you struggled with things, then left. And it's like, motherfucker, like, you don't know the first thing about what happened and how expected from like the kitchen table, you know?
Yeah. I was just talking to my wife about that the other day because like, so I don't know if you know this or not. I just got back from going to like mental health inpatient out in East, like 2 months ago or something like that. And it was great. It was absolutely needed for me. And I'm super happy I did it. But not very many people know like the actual cause and circumstances of everything. So like I have people coming up to me all the time, like giving me like condolences or like saying like, we're the same. We're, you know, and I'm like, I try to be very gracious and be like, yes, like whatever. But, you know, everyone's story, as you know, is unique and everyone's story is very varied. So while, you know, dealing with mental health problems is, you know, not unique, the idea that we're all kind of like paddling the same shitty canoe, but there is a lot to the stories, and it is interesting to see where the kitchen table will take it. Not every workplace has a kitchen table like the fire service does, and the fire service really does a good job of spinning yarns. It's really impressive, honestly. It's kind of fun to like like reality versus rumor sometimes, but not when you're necessarily the one that the rumors are about.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been the funny thing with that too is like how complicated we are as humans, right? Like just the day-to-day stresses that exist for anyone, any job, doesn't matter, you know, family stuff, just anything that is a normal stressor. It almost gets compounded at times with the fire service because you think you know what you're getting into. And same with the military and law enforcement, but I say fire service just to cover what I know. It's like the bad things happen, and some of the stuff that you see, you just can't make up. And you can't foresee that was going to come across your plate and then stick in your brain. And then it's like, so on top of dealing with maybe some kind of crazy stressor family thing that's going on, like a relationship issue at like a family level, now you're going to a workplace and dealing with nonstop experiences. And it's like, when do you have the time to decompress? Some people go to work and decompress. But when your work is causing other ones, it's another issue in itself. And just talking about it as a reality, I think is helpful. That it's not unique. You know, I've heard people say you choose to be a firefighter or an infantry Marine, you're going to get those experiences. And how can you complain about them, or how can you say that they're, you know, you're unique in that sense? It's like, we're not. We just, you know, we have to get better tools, because the old tools of firefighting and military is drink and put it away, you know?
Yeah, no, for real. And I think that's why normalizing these conversations, you know, obviously I try to do what I can through the podcast, and like this book is a huge tool in that same way, because not every military memoir, military story is also paired with this idea of, this is what happened, but this is the damage that it caused. And like, this is how we move forward from that too, which is, I think, a really important conversation that so often people want to like, you know, watch, you know, the military movie, but then not have to think about what happens like after the credits roll. Right. It's like, well, these people's stories didn't just like evaporate, right? Like they did all this cool shit, and then now they have to deal with that forevermore. Right. And so that's the unique thing that I think that your book does, which is like tell the and then we did, or and then I experienced portion of the story, right? And I think that's a really important conversation to have, to normalize it, because it hasn't been normalized, and people are trying to do it, but it's you know, difficult. And you know, going back to what you were saying previously with like the outside of work and the inside of work, one thing I discovered through, you know, all this therapy I've been doing as of late is like, you know, some people come to the fire service whole and then get broken by it, where I was much more inverse. I came to the fire service like struggling, and the fire service is like the best thing that happened to me. Not to say that it's not without its stressors, like you said, but it was more that had pushed me over the breaking point than the fact that it was the entire, you know, mountain or something. So, everyone has their own unique story, which I think is, you know, important to talk about. And the fact that it all gets you to the same place, which is, I need help, right? That heavy phone, you know, whatever that might be.
Yeah. And I agree. I came in a very similar way to the fire service, thinking that, you know, I'm already broken. Like I already dealt with some of the worst shit you can do as a human. So, you know, what's a fire service going to do? And it's like, well, I think had I addressed a lot of those issues a little more efficiently beforehand, and went about it in a way that was productive, it wouldn't have compounded some of the things that I struggled with. But again, I didn't leave the fire service on a one call or a couple call thing. It was like my body was getting taxed, and I was tired of not being able to hold my son, you know, because I had my neck wouldn't let me hold him, and I was like, is this the life I want? And it wasn't, you know.
That's a really perfect segue to the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, was like, as you know, husband and a father, like how has your experience like going through war, obviously working in the fire service, but even more so like your experience going to war shaped your worldview and like your view of what you aspire for your kids to experience and the nature of love and all these big questions that like couldn't possibly not be shaped by those experiences?
That's a good question. So I don't think, like, reflecting on war, like having a kid and going to war is a completely different experience than not having anything else to worry about, you know. And I only know that I didn't go to war. I was in Ukraine in February of this year, and going there and knowing that I was going to be near the front, not as a combatant but as an observer, it still was a completely different feeling than going overseas and fighting in a war without having kids. And I think that the questions that you start wondering of like, okay, who's going to take care of my kids if something happens? And, you know, you start looking at statistics for stepdad stuff, and it's like, well, do I want that for my family? And am I being selfish in doing this? And so there's a lot more of a pause for a lot of it having kids involved, you know. And
sorry, that's not funny. I started laughing because I started laughing because the idea that you were looking up statistics on stepdads is humorous. It's so bleak. That's me, dude. It's such a bleak Google search.
Dude, I am like, the one thing I've done very well, and my wife will attest to this, is catastrophize. I don't know if that's a word.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Like take something and like, my family's supposed to come home in 15 minutes. Why aren't they here? Did they get in a terrible car accident? Oh my God. Yeah. Now what's going to happen? How am I going to live my life, you know, like this? And, you know, so like, I go there, and it's probably not healthy, but it happens, you know? Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's just funny, man. It's just like, it's such a dark topic to think about, having to be concerned about your kids not having a father. But the idea of being like, what are the statistics for stepfathers is really, really dim.
Well, it is, man. Like, you look at it, the fucking social media has ruined my brain.
Yeah. Oh, it's ruined all of our brains, unfortunately. But yeah, getting back to that question. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off with that, but it's you know, you didn't have the experience of going there as a father, but I mean, I suppose in your most recent experiences you did, but you know, what do you like? You have such an intimate knowledge of life and death and like the stakes of everything. Like, how does that make you feel about raising a child, right?
It pisses me off when I see fathers or mothers like not having patience for their kid whose brain is developing. And saying things and making threats and doing all these things, especially when I've seen like the amount of loss I've seen for both combatants and just people on the job, you know, and so it gets me upset that there's not a lot of, and I think it's our society, there's not a lot of patience for kids. You know, it's like they need to behave a certain way. And so I see a lot of my peers spending a lot of their time disciplining, and discipline is great, but at the same time, it's like I see the childhood getting robbed from them, and our society is just a bleak place. Especially now, look at everything that's happening, and it's like we need to just let kids be kids, and not have them conform, you know, let them be kids. They will conform. They have to, you know, or they'll be societal outcasts. You know, if you're not a shit parent, you'll help guide them on that journey. But the thing that everything that I've experienced so far has done is made me more patient as a parent, as much as I want, and I do correct and do things. I think on the whole, it's like, okay, they get one shot at this childhood thing. And how would I feel if something were to happen and I didn't allow that to exist? I didn't allow their childhood to shine through. And so for me, that's what I guess, I don't know, that's what I really hold on to, because I know how fragile life is, and it can be taken away for any reason, at any moment. It doesn't have to make sense, and most deaths don't. So, you know, the amount of people that I know who've had I'm going to say, this is going to sound really cold, but the amount of people I know that have had the pleasure of watching a loved one die on a bed as they say goodbye after a nice long life, is foreign to me, because I don't know that. I only know a lot of tragedy. And so it's like, why don't you see how precious life is? And that's what drives my day to day. Like, how do I make that day something I can look back on and be like, you know, I made a good impression on my kid, or, you know, the other kids that are around mine, you know. I don't know. It's kind of a fucking dark, dim thought.
No, I mean, it's reality. I mean, the thing is, like, I think that in totality, the idea that, like, we have to allow children to have the space to live and respect the idea of how fragile everything is. I think that's what I hold when I think of, like, because I've been accused of being a worry wart, despite the fact that I have zero worry for my own safety. When it comes to my children, I'm a bit of a worry wart, but that's because I'm like, you don't realize they're a moment away from, like, destruction at any given second, right?
Yeah.
And my wife's a pediatric ICU nurse, so she knows it more than me even. But you know, I have a lot of healthy respect, and I think it's important, though. It's like, let them be. My wife always has to tell me, you have to let them do it. Like, if they get hurt, they'll be fine, right? And I was like, you know, you just live this life of prevention, and you have to let them go at some point too.
I remember talking about this with a couple of firefighters that are now captains on the job, and they we were laughing at one morning because we were all, you know, just talking about how this job affected just our day-to-day thinking of, like, be careful, don't stop under a stoplight, because someone else could hit that stoplight and it could fall and pummel through and kill you, just like that dude we had on that last call. And your family's like, what the fuck's wrong with you? You know,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, like, what are you talking about? But it's like, when you're around it and you see it for so often, it's like, no, it's a very real thing. And that's been the struggle too, is juggling, like, okay, you can stand on that and you will break your arm if you fall, but it's not going to kill you. So it's like, go do that, you know?
Well, it feels like it feels like I live in, like the set of the movie Final Destination. Like, that's how my life feels, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's all these, like, horrible calamitous deaths occurring, and you're just like, okay, I guess we'll try to, like, keep going despite the fact that the world is chaos around me, right? So as we try to tie a bow on this thing at the end, you know, I want to give you the opportunity to make your pitch for the book, in terms of, like, what's your hope? Like, if you could sum up, why did I do this into a piece here? Like, what's your hope? Why did you make this happen?
My hope is that some young warrior, or even, you know, someone that has not experienced combat, reads it and can either have the experiences that we went through in the back of their mind, and allow them to make better decisions down the road. That's it. And the other end of it is for, like, family members of veterans to be able to understand a little bit of what goes on in our minds. You know, we can be distant. We can just want to shut the world out. I mean, you know, I don't think that's unique to just military. That's anyone in the same industry here. And just be able to understand kind of what's going on and why we might be behaving that way, you know? So
for sure. All right. Before you go, tell us where we can find it, where we can get it.
Yeah, it's available on online at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, you know, Audible. You can buy it right from the publisher, Casemate Publishing. I've been a little frustrated right now recently because Amazon's taking forever to ship, apparently.
Oh no.
So buy it direct from the publisher, from Barnes & Noble right now. And then again, Audible and local bookstores have it. You know, I've been told it's going to be in the airport, the Hudson bookstores. So
cool.
I'll believe it when I see it. But if you see it, pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to get a physical copy of it so I can put it on the shelf.
Yeah, I'll send you one.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome, dude. I appreciate it. It's great to finally meet you. Hopefully I'll meet you in person here at some point, but it's been a pleasure for real.
Awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for taking the time.
For sure. Thanks, buddy.